Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel Pivot or Die, where we talk about brands who made successful pivots and those who didn't. My name is Alejandro Quinteros and I'm so excited to be talking to one of our past clients, Zenhub. More specifically, I'll be talking to their creative director, Elspeth Tory, and how we supported their team in creating this brand pivot. So here we go. Hi Elspeth, thank you so much for being in the podcast today, Pivot or Die.
Thanks, it's really exciting to be here.
Maybe you can give a little bit of a background of your role in Zenhub.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been at Zenhub for just over a year now, almost a year and a half actually. And I came on as their creative director, so working within the marketing team to help with this sort of big rebrand that was happening. Zenhub started off as a simple kind of, but very effective plugin for GitHub, but has really expanded and become its own platform. So there was a need and a desire to have our brand reflect this change. As everybody knows, rebranding is always a huge project that involves multiple different groups and can also just be really challenging just because people are attached to existing branding. So I was brought in to oversee that, and it's been fantastic and a really incredible journey so far.
Yeah, and for some context, Pivot and Pilot supported Elspeth and her team through this rebrand as well. So today we just want to get an understanding of what has changed since we did the rebrand. Again, a little bit more of that strategy that we applied. You mentioned that you're shifting the application from being just a GitHub plugin to opening it up to everyone and anyone. So maybe let's talk about how the branding has reflected this shift and improved the perception of the app moving towards that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So our initial branding actually was just a word mark, pretty straightforward. It was very simple. We had a space-themed illustration system. When we reached out to Pivot and Pilot, what we were really looking for is to have somebody elevate that and give us that guidance on how do we connect this to our users and to the people who are really involved in our product, and how do we make our brand reflect really genuinely who we are and have that appeal to people coming to our website, looking at our illustrations, so that right away, right off the bat, when they see our brand, they feel what we're all about. Pivot and Pilot was amazing for really helping us connect our core messaging and who we want to be and what we are to that look and feel. So we had this exciting color palette, but we didn't really know, okay, how do we reflect this across a whole website? We had multiple illustrations, again, they were all space themed, and we had a fairly limited palette, but with this new palette, we had all kinds of opportunity to expand with colors and bright colors, but we needed guidance from your team on how to implement that in a way that kind of still kept the balance, because we are in SaaS, we are still dealing with engineers and, but we are still, a lot of the time working with startups as well. So we really needed it to be reflective of like engineering, so sort of that serious coding side, but also the fact that our product in an ideal world, when it works well, which it most often does, brings team that sort of peace of mind, hopefully makes your team happier because it's going to be working more efficiently.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's like so many dynamic tools that Zenhub offers that no one else in the market competes or has them available. It was such a fun project working with you because it was like such a big palette that we were given to play with. And it was a challenge and a lot of fun at the same time to kind of create the system in place. What we enjoyed working with your team is that it felt like you guys just got it and understood how the branding affected your perceived market value and what Zenhub brings to the table. You and I are essentially share the same job description. We're both creative directors. So
yeah.
And you said you also have a background as an animator. So you have depth knowledge and experience bringing brand stories to life. I guess my question for you would be, what was the value of bringing someone like myself and my firm, Pivot and Pilot, for the Zenhub rebrand as a contractor that supported your team?
Yeah, so anyone who's done a rebrand knows that although they're really satisfying at the very end, are extremely challenging to implement because you have multiple layers of individuals who have a vested interest in it working out, and people are extremely attached to what's already there. So coming in, I think immediately we recognized, certainly A, we're a very small team at Zenhub, and B, that we recognized that bringing in experts was an essential tool in in getting this right. Because although I'm a creative director, with an amazing team of graphic designers, of visual designers, there is that recognition that there are agencies that really just specialize in getting that look and feel and that connection right. And I do think when companies are looking to rebrand, it's so important to not mess around with that, and to go and find companies like Pivot and Pilot who can nail it, because your brand is that external reflection of who you are. It's not only what your customers see, but it's also what your employees are going to be, building around. It reflects your own values. It is your guiding voice and message. I think that the real reason is just to make sure that we elevated that brand, had an amazing illustration system that reflected who we are, and that we didn't just try to sort of wing it. Certainly, these things can be done internally and often are, but knowing that there's a company that has that expertise that can guide us through that step-by-step process, which you guys did so effectively. One of the things I really loved about working with your team was the way that we had these progressive steps. So this kind of digging into who we are, and then at every step checking in with us, even, passing on information to the broader company, so that we could get their feedback, really making sure that this was like a holistic process to guide us through those steps, so that, again, everybody felt like they were involved, but we were still relying on your expertise to get us to the right place in the end. And it was just so amazing to see how that whole process came together. So we have this multiplier, which is our logo, the logo itself, which is a force multiplier for teams. But the fact that the way the illustration system reflected that, so that where these two systems come together, that's where you have these beautiful gradients that pop up. And creating a system of rules around that was just amazing to have, because as every visual designer, graphic designer knows, if you can come in and have a set of rules around how you can play with the visuals, but within some nice constraints. So, when that came to picking a great font and knowing exactly how do we combine these gradients, because gradients, they can be lovely, but they can also go off the rails. It was basically like giving us the handbook for how do we make this incredible, and how do we use this brand effectively while still really connecting to our messaging.
You mentioned earlier how important it is not only for the external perception, but also for the internal team perception of the brand. And I love that you felt included. I think that, that not only you, but your entire team felt included in the process. I think that, we are just pulling out what already exists. And our goal is to just really reflect and put a spotlight on what makes you unique and different than the rest. Something that we worked really hard to do is humanizing the brand. And I see this a lot in the SaaS space and in tech space, that you don't see that human connection, and we forget that at the end of the day, those early adopters, those end users are people. There has to be a human component. So maybe let's talk about how we achieved that. And I know we did a photo shoot with you guys, so maybe do that a bit.
Yeah, that was great, because as you know, stock photos, they have their purpose, but obviously at some point you kind of hit a wall with the ladies laughing, eating salads. It just doesn't reflect who you are. We wanted our photo shoot to reflect a diverse audience, a diverse customer base, to not necessarily look like stock photos. The whole process of selecting models, that you were amazing at helping us with, giving us this group of people who did reflect more of who we are. And then we were actually able to do the photo shoot at the Zenhub offices, which was great, because as a virtual remote first company, it was nice to actually have these beautiful shots inside of our offices. Finally, that was an amazing addition to this project, so that our website could have that human component, could show the teams working together. And even some of our employees participated in the photo shoot, so that we could have this kind of well-rounded reflection that wasn't just, a stock image off of a website that had absolutely no connection to who we are and what we do. We are a smaller company, but we pack a big punch, and we really wanted to reflect that uniqueness and that innovation that we're really proud of at our company.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it was great seeing your team being so enthusiastic about the photos too.
It was really good. And I think a great experience for everybody involved. And just also the models were so fantastic. It's what makes the difference. And again, you look at it probably on the surface, it's not really obvious, but people visiting the site, it just feels different, and you can't maybe put your finger on why. But yes, it's because of the fact that this is a custom photo shoot with people doing what your teams are going to be doing. It's not just pulled from a database somewhere.
Right. There's that, very famous quote I'm sure everyone has, like, in the design world has heard it, right? Like, design is invisible, and branding is very much like that too. It's just that it's an exercise of creating trust to who you want to connect with, right? It's a very interesting, it's almost psychological. Well, it is a very psychological exercise.
Absolutely. When I talk about the brand guide, like refining our brand guide, not just saying here's a color palette, but saying here's a color palette, and when you're using it, this is what you should keep in mind. And when you're using gradients, use it under these conditions, so that every aspect of your design kind of has little rules around it, but not in a way that's restrictive, in a way that's actually kind of liberating. So as we've been able to move on to create new illustrations, we still have this foundation that you've given us about how do we apply the rules of our brand. And then it allows us to be creative, but maintain consistency. And that is such a gift, really, when you have different teams coming in and working on things. And especially, we're a small team. So if we have a contractor coming in to help out, immediately they have all the rules that they need to know how to create illustrations for us. They're working on a video. They know this is the font, this is how you can use it, this is how you work with the gradients and everything. So it basically gives everybody a really clear set of guidelines with how they can experiment while still keeping everything consistent, which is so useful.
Yeah, and I think it's in SASS is a space that needs a lot of color. Poses the challenge of, okay, well, what are going to be the color combinations? How are we going to make sure that they feel cohesive without it being so overwhelming? So that was the challenge for us too, that we took on. But it was really rewarding to see the final outcome. Since we last rebranded, you guys have raised $10 million, and congratulations, that's amazing.
Yes, thank you. We got our next round of funding, which is fantastic, and I think that's a reflection of the fact that we are continuing to expand. We've now launched Zenhub issues to go along with our connection to GitHub issues, and that allows non-GitHub users to use the app. So again, really pushing the boundaries of letting non-technical users in to be a part of development without disrupting the workflow of developers. So yeah, we're very excited about that. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that. How were you able to open up Zenhub to everyone?
So essentially what we've done is created a different kind of issue. So we've got our GitHub issues. So at its base, Zenhub pulls in GitHub data, which is one of its amazing assets, and why it's so effective is that you can either work in the app or you can work directly in GitHub using Zenhub. But what we wanted to do is allow the creation of issues. So we created this new Zenhub issues, which allows you to create issues without needing to be connected to a GitHub account. So that means that you could have people involved in seeing your board who can include tasks and can track work, but who don't necessarily need to be connected to GitHub, because as anybody knows who's non-technical and has tried to go into GitHub, it can get confusing and difficult and challenging, but that's not a reason why non-technical people shouldn't be connected to what's happening. Certainly you've got leads and management who want to have that visibility and that connection and the ability to add issues without necessarily disrupting the workflow and needing to create a GitHub account and connect. The other thing that this helps us with is that when people are onboarding, they can actually see how the whole system works because they can use Zenhub issues. So they don't necessarily need to connect that GitHub account right away in order to see the true value of the product.
Thanks for sharing. That's fantastic. I think we're also going through a similar process of opening up our niche to serving multiple industries. And I think that also opens up the opportunity for you guys. I think that, it's in terms of like from a branding standpoint, and since like raising those $12 million, like what has changed in the company and what can we expect from Zenhub in the upcoming years?
Yeah, so I think this is the start of the future of Zenhub, which is really pushing boundaries and expanding that connection between developers and the teams that work with them. I mean, really, we're, especially these days in a very remote world, lots of teams working in different locations. And our goal is to make those communications and those interactions as efficient as possible and as seamless as possible as well. We really want teams to avoid those interruptions, avoid the meetings that potentially kill them. And also, when you're dealing with multiple time zones, like meetings are actually sometimes really difficult to have because people are like 6 hours apart. So if our app can alleviate and remove so many of those roadblocks, then what happens is that teams are actually able to just do their work, and not only do their work, but be creative about it. What we want to do is essentially make it easier for teams to succeed. So that means if you've got a smaller team or a larger team, we want to help make your lives easier. If you're starting up and you've never used Scrum before and you just kind of want to use parts of it, we have insights that help you immediately see, well, why are things working? What issues are not getting completed? We essentially take that load off and allow you to focus on what really matters, which is like writing great code, essentially.
On the execution part of things, I think everyone has gone remote, it feels like, and I think Zenhub will definitely bring people together, because it is true. There's so much time that gets wasted on meetings. I find there's days in which it's meeting after meeting, and I have like brackets of like 30 minutes or 1 hour in between where nothing gets accomplished. And I think, with the way that the world is going, with the new standard, which is like a bit of a hybrid, whether it's like half remote and half in the office, I think being async makes a lot of sense. And I think tapping Zenhub onto that new lifestyle will be very important for you guys.
Exactly. And it was really interesting too, like while we were doing the rebrand and working with your team, we had this great plan for all the different steps. And what we were able to do actually is use our own tools. So walk the walk and talk the talk, to use Zenhub to plan the whole rebrand. So one of the things, again, with your team providing us with really clear timelines of like what would be established each step, we were then able to track all of the different steps and then to automate the movement of that from team to team, so that as the whole process went in, so part that we were doing with Pivot and Pilot, and then once we moved on from that, so the implementation, like obviously overhauling the whole brand was something that required a lot of tracking, a lot of management. And if we were able to use our own tool to do that, to use labels to group things, to use epics to sort of put together bigger tasks. And again, with our team working fully remotely, we were able to get through this in part because we had this great timeline and structure from your team, and then on our own team, making sure that we put everything into the system so that everybody had visibility on what was happening and where things stood. So you don't need to actually Slack somebody 50 times to find out what's going on. You can just check in the issues, see what's happening. All that centralization, one source of truth, is really key.
It was just so cool to see how Zenhub was so on top of their game, and not only dealing with one person, it was an entire team voting on these things. And that experience goes to show the efficiency that Zenhub brings to a company like your own, right? And I think anyone would benefit from that. So yeah, kudos to that, to you guys for creating such an app that is so dynamic and that brings everyone together in such an efficient way.
Like in a way, because you are used to having to be really efficient with your use of time. So when you do have a meeting, like I got to use that whole time, like that is when I will see them. Your meetings tend to start right on time. Yeah. I find there's a lot more efficiency in our meetings when everybody is remote, because I think you value those chunks of time a lot more. And the same thing. So, when your team would give us feedback, it was really easy to share it. We use Slack as well to get information out there. We use feedback forums. And again, we were able to coordinate and have our little meetings together and just have those discussions about what we thought and get that feedback to you quickly, because we're used to working quickly and efficiently and having to pivot a lot. I think SaaS companies in general, using that sort of Scrum mentality, you need to get the ball down the field, not try to make something perfect in that first step. Recognize that this is about getting to the place you need to go.
Yeah, I think I always like to tell people that branding is a continuous exercise, and pivoting is going to be a word that you're going to have to get comfortable with. This is just the nature of growth. And I mean, if you're doing it right, you would want to grow and assess, right? And study the data and look at what's working with you and pivot according to what's working. And we talked a little bit about this when we were like talking, just you and I, before we started recording. You mentioned how in the SaaS space, pivoting has to happen so quickly and so much. So maybe can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, essentially within SaaS in general, and certainly within our domain, which is project management software, it's a lot of competition and a lot of change. Like I remember when I first started at the company, one of my first tasks was to go out and research all of our competitors, try and gather some intelligence. And I remember, I think it was like 2 months later when I looked back on all of the screenshots I'd taken and everything, about half of them, they'd completely overhauled their websites. It is really a mentality about just keep on tweaking and tweaking until you get it right, and not feeling like you have to be stuck with one thing and never change. And that's what a good brand is about, right? Your brand, your core, your word mark, and your logo, those are the core elements that stay. But then you have this ability to expand. And that was what Pivot and Pilot did so perfectly for us, is take your brand and show us what we can do with it, and what are the potential ways that we could maximize the connection to our logo and our palette, but use it in a way that reflects who we are and what we do. And then build a brand guide around that, including those illustrations, to really allow us to spread our wings and to build things more efficiently. And also, again, having that core foundation allowed us to going forward, let our team create great assets. Because that's what you want, ideally, is to be able to be set free, have your internal team or contractors or whoever comes in use those assets efficiently and in a way that still allows you to continue to pivot and make changes based on new data that you're collecting, essentially. We're constantly trying things out, doing A/B testing, seeing how do we reach people? How do we help them understand what we do?
Absolutely. No, I think that you guys are really pushing for keeping relevant, and relevancy right now in this attention economy, it can be difficult. So yeah, I think it is, everything you've said makes a lot of sense. You gotta stay relevant and you gotta stay on top of things like trends. And speaking of trends, I wanted to talk to you about AI and how you...
Oh, yes.
AI. Oh my gosh. What do you think of it?
So I've definitely tried DALL-E, like from a visual perspective. Like there's the two components, right? There's the Chat GPT. I've actually used Notion's AI as well. It's super powerful. It's both scary and exciting. I think being part of a marketing team, I can see the potential. I really feel like what it will allow us to do, at least now, certainly God knows what's going to happen in 2 years or something. But for now,
machines take over, you mean?
Yeah, that's right.
To use it as to create content that then a human comes in and hones and makes like a real connection with. You could use it to like write tweets or to help you, look at your competitors, to gather information. I do find it useful to, if I say, can you go tell me like about Zenhub's competitors or what's going on out there? Because it's going and gathering data from the web. So in a way, the information it's giving me is technically what some of our potential clients or customers are seeing as well. So I do find it as an information gathering tool. It's great. For visuals, I find it super interesting. DALL-E has been really fun and my kids have loved experimenting with like creating all kinds of art. I used to work in the video game industry and I know that coming up with concept art, I find that as like an incredibly powerful tool. Like if you have an idea and you want to be able to just visualize it using a description, that's an amazing tool. I mean, obviously, I would hope it would never replace the incredibly talented designers that are there. But I do think, again, as like a tool for quickly helping you visualize something, it's effective. And I could see, again, when the technology gets to the point where it's not giving people like weird hands and strange arms or like right now, I know that's not quite there yet. But if you were writing a blog and you said to the AI, I need a picture of a developer on a computer that looks like this, and that's, this is the background, and then I need it in these dimensions with this format, that would be pretty nice, I have to say, for those kind of repetitive tasks where, normally you would have to go research and find an image and then compose it, and you could tell it to slap your logo on it. Like it would save a lot of time, again, freeing up hopefully more time for those really creative pursuits. Same with coding too. That's the same thing, right? If you can implement some sort of use of that AI technology to do those repetitive tasks, hopefully it will give us more time to be creative.
Yeah, I like to think of it as almost like a starting point. I don't know if you feel that way,
yes,
but to me, it's almost
100%.
like, I see it as like, it's a starting point. It gets me going. I mean, you still want to do research and you still want to get informed, but you get to the end result quicker, which allows you to, like you said, to focus on other things, right? So it is scary though. I'm not going to lie. It does feel like, are we getting slowly replaced? And
in a year or two, I just keep thinking, my God, like what's it going to be able to do? I'm watching it carefully. I'm reading a lot of articles about how to ask good prompts, how to write good prompts. I think that is so much of it is knowing what to ask and how to ask it to see what that potential is. But yeah, when it comes to work, you could get it to write blogs potentially. Again, creating a base, which then needs to be enhanced, but not bad at all. In the same way that, Google Translate has gotten to be really good. You sort of wonder, like in 5 years, will we just have little earpieces like in Star Trek? Everybody hears everything and it's instantly translated. It is a bit of a brave new world, and it'd be interesting to see certainly creatively how that gets applied. I know that there are going to be some really interesting results that come from it, but yeah, there's that little voice in the back of my mind that wonders,
is this a red flag or am I really loving this? Should I be worried?
Yeah, like it's really cool for creating art, I have to say. So DALL-E is like the visual, it's also same company that did Chat GPT, OpenAI, I think it's called. You can get it to create anything. Like my kids were getting it to do like put a corgi on a skateboard, surfing through the sky, eating a hamburger or something like that in the style of whatever, like Matisse or something. It's pretty spot on. I think it's got loads of potential. And that one, I'm just more curious to see what happens. I think it'll be a while before that's like close enough. Yeah.
I don't know if it happens to you, but whenever I use ChatGPT quite a bit, and I'm gonna be nice to the robot and say thank you and like please.
Well, I do that to my Alexa. I'm always like, hey, thanks so much, just in case, right? You never know. Maybe she'll remember. Deep down, she'll have like a core memory that I was nice to her. Same with my Siri and
just in case they start taking over, that they think of us as the good ones,
yeah, exactly. Like, I don't, it was Boston Dynamics that makes those robot videos. They have some pretty scary robots. You think, okay, we're not too far from all of this being combined into one terrifying package. But if I could get one to just like do my laundry, I'd be super happy.
Oh my gosh, sign me up for that one too.
We want those Jetson robots. Like, that's the ones we want. I don't necessarily need it to write my tweets, but if I could just do my laundry, I'd be super happy.
I don't have any more questions for you. I think this has been really fun.
Okay.
It's been really great hearing how branding has affected the Zenhub, the newest branding. I'm sure you'll keep on refining and tweaking and rebranding as things change and trends happen. Thank you so much for joining me today. And yeah, it was great having you.
Yeah, it's been so great to chat with you. It was so fun working with your team, and it was so professional. And we just came out of it with such a great tool that we've been using. We use every day, really, in all of the new assets we create. We're always thinking back to like the core vision that you gave us, really. So grateful for that. So yeah, thanks again.
Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Comment below, what did you learn today?